Late one night, a food delivery driver accepts an eerie order to a desolate house. But when he arrives, the ghostly figure inside whispers, "You shouldn't have come back. Now, there's no escape." It was an unusually cold autumn night in Indianapolis when Ethan, a 24-year-old food delivery driver, received an order that would alter his life forever. The city was quiet, save for the faint sounds of cars passing by and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Ethan had been working late shifts for the past few weeks, trying to save enough money to pay his rent after a rough month. He wasn't bothered by the loneliness of his work, he was used to it. But tonight felt different. His phone pinged with a new delivery request. It was from a location he didn't recognize, a small, secluded street on the outskirts of the city near the edge of a dark, wooded area. He hesitated, unsure if he should accept it. Something about the address sent a chill down his spine. It wasn't the kind of area people ordered food from, especially so late at night. However, the promise of a large tip motivated him to ignore the uneasy feeling and accept the job. The drive took him further into unfamiliar territory. As he navigated through narrow, winding streets, the area grew eerily quiet. The houses were few and far between, and the streetlights flickered intermittently, casting long, grotesque shadows across the pavement. Ethan had to rely on his GPS, which led him deeper into the darkness. A sense of dread settled over him, but he brushed it off as nerves. He was just tired. Finally, he arrived at the destination, a large old house standing alone at the end of a long gravel driveway. The house appeared abandoned, with boarded-up windows and a sagging roof. The yard was overgrown with weeds, and the only sign of life was a faint glow coming from the front porch. The house looked like something out of a horror movie, but Ethan figured it was an old residence, perhaps just in need of some repairs. He pulled up to the curb, checking his phone. The order had been placed with specific instructions: leave food on porch, do not knock, do not speak. A strange request, but not the strangest he had received. With a sigh, he grabbed the food from his car and made his way to the porch. As he approached, the front door creaked open, just a crack. A thin, trembling hand reached out, grabbing the bags from his hands without a word. Ethan looked up, but the figure was already gone, leaving him standing alone in the cold night air. He was unnerved but tried to shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. Just as he turned to leave, he heard a faint whisper, a low, raspy voice from within the house, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Thank you for the delivery. You shouldn't have come." Ethan froze. His heart pounded in his chest. Who had spoken? He hadn't seen anyone. His mind raced, but his instinct screamed at him to leave. He turned and hurried back to his car, his thoughts spiraling into confusion and fear. He didn't look back. As he drove away, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and every time he glanced into the rearview mirror, he thought he saw something moving in the shadows. Was it just his imagination, or had something followed him? When he arrived home, he tried to shake off the unease, blaming it on exhaustion. He tossed his keys onto the counter and collapsed into bed, hoping sleep would bring some relief. But sleep never came. In the days that followed, Ethan began to experience strange occurrences. It started with small things. His phone would ring with no one on the other end, doors that he swore he had locked were found wide open, and faint whispers would enter his apartment in the dead of night. But the worst was yet to come. One evening, as he was leaving his apartment to begin his shift, he was startled by a sudden knock at his door. When he opened it, no one was there. On the doorstep lay a small, greasy paper bag, just like the ones he had delivered to that old house. Confused, Ethan picked it up and opened it. Inside was a note written in shaky handwriting: "You should have never left." His heart sank. This was getting out of hand. The following night, after finishing his shift, Ethan was once again summoned to the same address, the old house. His phone pinged with the delivery request. He hesitated for a long moment, but something inside him urged him to go. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was curiosity. He didn't know. He drove out to the house once again, feeling a growing sense of dread. This time, the house looked different. The windows were cracked, and the porch light flickered as though struggling to stay lit. The entire house seemed to breathe with an unnatural energy. When he arrived, the door opened on its own, and the same trembling hand reached out to take the food. But this time, something felt more wrong than before. As the door slammed shut, Ethan heard the voice again, louder this time: "You shouldn't have come back." The air turned cold, and his breath became visible in the frigid night. A figure appeared in the window, just a silhouette, barely discernible through the grime-covered glass. The figure's eyes were dark, hollow, and unblinking. Ethan froze, unable to move. Suddenly, he heard a loud bang from inside the house, followed by what sounded like footsteps dragging across the floor. The ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble, and a cold wind howled through the trees. A force, unseen but powerful, pushed him back toward his car. As he stumbled toward the vehicle, he heard the voice one last time, almost in a whisper, "You are marked. There's no escape now." Terrified, Ethan drove away, his hand shaking on the wheel. The events of the night replayed in his mind, each one more disturbing than the last. He had barely made it back to the city when he saw a figure standing at the end of the street, just beyond the glow of the streetlights. It was the same figure from the window. He slammed on the brakes, his heart racing. The figure slowly turned toward him, its face now visible, skin pale, eyes wide and lifeless. The figure took a slow step forward, and the air grew heavier, colder. Ethan gunned the engine and sped away, the figure's hollow gaze never leaving him. For the next several weeks, Ethan couldn't escape the terror. The house, the figure, the whispers, they followed him everywhere. He began to lose sleep, his mind unraveling as the haunting continued. The once peaceful streets of Indianapolis now felt suffocating, filled with shadows that watched him. Every knock at his door, every rustle in the night, every strange phone call, he was never alone. Desperate, he reached out to a paranormal investigator, hoping for an explanation. The investigator, a seasoned expert in the supernatural, listened carefully to Ethan's story before speaking. "The house you visited is cursed," the investigator explained. "Years ago, a young delivery boy was murdered there. He made the mistake of delivering food to the wrong house, and the spirit of the house now seeks out those who dare to cross its threshold." Ethan's stomach churned as the investigator continued. "The boy's spirit is trapped there, and anyone who delivers food to that house becomes marked. The figure you saw, the one who watches you, is not human. It is the manifestation of the curse drawn to you." Ethan was paralyzed by the chilling truth. He had unknowingly walked into a nightmare, and now there was no way out. The curse had already taken hold, and his fate was sealed. In the end, Ethan vanished without a trace. His car was found abandoned on the outskirts of the city, near that same cursed house. But no one ever found Ethan. His name, along with the haunting tale of the Indianapolis ghost food delivery boy, became another terrifying legend whispered by those who dared to live in the city. And so, the story of the ghost food delivery boy continued to haunt the streets of Indianapolis, a warning to anyone who might be foolish enough to deliver food to the cursed house at the edge of town, because once you entered that house, you would never leave. As the days passed, Ethan's life spiraled into a nightmare. The haunting continued, relentless and inescapable. No matter where he went, he felt eyes watching him, heard faint whispers in the silence of the night. His apartment, once a place of refuge, now felt like a prison. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak in the floorboards became a sinister omen. The figure from the house appeared in his nightmares, its hollow eyes never blinking, always following him. It wasn't just in his dreams anymore, it lurked in the corners of his waking life. Every time he stepped outside, every time he glanced into a window, he could sense its presence. The curse had taken root, and Ethan was its prey. Desperate, he tried everything. He consulted paranormal experts, searched for answers online, but nothing worked. The haunting grew stronger. The whispers became louder, more urgent. They weren't just warnings anymore, they were demands. "You should never have left. Now you will join us," the voice echoed in his mind, each word sending chills through his veins. The once lively streets of Indianapolis felt suffocating, filled with shadows and dread. Ethan knew he couldn't escape. The house had claimed him. The curse was inescapable, and as the figure's presence grew closer, he realized the terrible truth: he was marked for eternity. The house had him now, body and soul. One final night, Ethan disappeared without a trace. His car was found abandoned, keys still in the ignition, but there was no sign of him. The only clue left behind was a small, greasy paper bag lying on the seat, a reminder of his final, fateful delivery. And so, the story of the Indianapolis ghost food delivery boy became a chilling legend, a warning to anyone foolish enough to take a late-night delivery to that cursed house. The whispers, the shadows, and the figures still haunt the streets, waiting for their next victim. If you found this story terrifying, make sure to like and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. And don't forget to hit the bell icon, because in the world of the supernatural, there's always a next story, and you never know when the darkness might find you.